Welcome back to Make It Mondays, and this week I'm starting on a new blanket. This one is with homespun yarn, so the nice thick plushy yarn, not as thick as the yarn behind me. And it's going to be a log cabin, but it's a double log cabin. So it's going to be worked out from center and going round and round and round. For my quilter friends, this will be kind of normal. For knitting and crochet, it's a little less normal. So the gray is one of the colors. The other color, I have a whole bunch of little pieces, and then eventually I will have the big skeins as well. I'm just trying to use up a whole bunch of scraps at this point so that my collection gets a little smaller. So let me get everything flipped around and I'll show you how this gets started. So I've put on the slip stitch, and now we're going to cast on 10 stitches. So the other slightly unique thing about this log cabin versus some of the others is that I'm not doing it in even squares. Everything is going to be based off of rectangles that are 10 stitches and 30 rows tall. But that proportion is going to be changing depending on which direction I'm going on the blanket. 8, 2 more. Okay. And partially because I'm doing cable cast on, I do need to knit the first stitch. Past this first row, every first stitch of a row will be slipped. So knitting across. Then I try to keep careful track of where the tail is for the first several rows so I don't accidentally use it rather than the actual working yarn. So that was the slip. I put the yarn in between the needles, ready to knit. Which way you need to do that so that the end stitch twists in the right direction really depends on how you knit. So I wish I could be a little bit more specific with that, but I can't. I believe this is often marked as a slip with yarn in front, but it also depends on how the stitches were twisted on the previous row. So again, just double checking how things look as you move along. So the upside is this is literally the only stitches besides the pickup and knits that are in the entire blanket. The downside, that means it's not all that exciting to watch. I will be back when there are 15 of these purl ridges on the right side, and then I'll show you the next step. So I've gotten through the first little block, and now it's time to bind off. And it is just a standard knit bind off, so knit a stitch, pass the previous stitch over. You can kind of do whatever bind off works best for you, as long as the working yarn ends up on the left hand side of the block. That is the part that's important, unless you want to be weaving in far more ends than absolutely necessary. Again, I'm doing this with scraps of yarn, so I will be weaving in a lot of ends regardless, but the point still stands, as few ends as humanly possible. Okay, so I'm going to just knot the tail and the working loop together, or the working yarn and the loop together. Then we're going to flip the entire thing around, grab our new ball of yarn, find its center, hope it doesn't do too much of what I lovingly call yarn barf on me. Actually managed to get it out pretty easily. And start on the second color. So in this case, I'm going to use the same cast on. So I'm going to start there. Going to leave a nice long tail. For anyone who doesn't remember, I like having longer tails when it comes to homespun because the yarn tends to shred in the process of being moved around from place to place as I'm working on it. So inserting through the cast on and picking up a loop. So in this case, doing a cable cast on or something similar, where there's a nice big opening on that cast on edge, is very useful. Okay. Now I've only come up with 9 stitches, which means I missed one at the beginning. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I'm actually going to move it all the way to the other end, insert in that slip stitch to pick up number 10. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I move it right back to where I was. And now on this side, I can in fact do the slip one and knit across. And literally repeating exactly what I had. I am going to do the next little bit off camera. I will come back when it is time to pick up along the edge of some of the blocks. I don't know if it's going to be near here or a little bit later on, to show you how the further pickups look and how this is looking at that point. Be back in a bit. So it's been a while since I started this, as far as progress, not necessarily time. So here's the 2 squares where I started. I've worked out, and now it's time to pick up along this edge. So I've tied it off like I showed before. So I'm going to quickly untie the yarn, put that loop back on the needle, and then I'm going to find the edge stitch and pick up 1 stitch per every slipped stitch on the edge. So that is actually part of the reason why this style of pattern calls for a slipped stitch. If you follow me enough, you'll notice that I do that on almost all my blankets, whether or not I'm picking up from that edge. So this is the hardest part working with homespun yarn with blankets. It's just finding where to pick up the stitches. So I am feeling with my fingers of where the holes are. And then I'm going to go into where the last stitch is picked up from, last stitch of that block, and then every single cast or bound off V as well. Again, worked all the way down. This does just take some time. I'm going to work all the way down, and then it's going to be the same process of slip the edge and knit back all the way across. In this case for 20 rows, and then binding off. So I will be back when this entire blanket is done. So yeah, be back in a bit. And here is the blanket all the way done. So it actually did work out beautifully. And this time around, it worked as yarn chicken successfully, which means I have no more of either one of these yarns left in my stash, which is great. The pattern for this will be available shortly on my Patreon. Each pattern there is $5. But if you made it this far in the video, please consider dropping a like, maybe a comment if you have ideas for other blankets that you want to see. And if you want notifications of when there's going to be more videos, subscribe and hit the notification bell. But this one came out super pretty. Okay, and I will see you next time on Make It Mondays. Bye.